And welcome back to part 29 of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where today we're continuing our journey through the Labyrinth of Amala as we are wrapping up the 4th Kalpa. As I've said before, it was either the last video is going to be super long or this one was going to be super long, but just because the previous video would get to be a little bit longer, I put the big chunk of it in this one instead. Because otherwise, this video would be 20 minutes, if not 19 minutes long. And the other one would be like 55 minutes long. So for the sake of just trying to balance it out just that little bit more, the big chunk, aka the boss, is in this video instead of the previous one. Because this video's intention was originally just going to be showing how to access the 5th Kalpa and doing the opening of it. Which I still do in this video. It's just when I was looking at it, I was like, I had to pick. Because simply put, the boss fight at the end of the 4th Kalpa is the second longest fight in the recording. Like, in terms of all the bosses I encounter in this one was the second longest. At 25 minutes. From the moment the fight starts to the moment it ends. And so, yeah, when we get to the boss, settle down. Because it's entirely just because my setup is the way it is that it ends up taking so long. Because I'm so much more physical based over magic based. And I don't have a good compromise if I get caught with my hands tied and are expected to use more magic. And what also doesn't help is that the boss has access to an instant kill called Death Flies, and Death Flies seems to consistently connect to half my team. But if you can work your way all the way back to the northmost push of this room, you'll find a door that's kind of obscured a little bit, but this is the boss door. The moment you open it, you'll be fighting the boss. So prep yourself up and stack yourself up at the door so you're not taking any unnecessary damage, and then only enter when you're ready. The boss behind this door is one that's very iconic with the Shin Megami Tensei franchise.
You've withstood the attacks of the fiends, and now you stand here before me. For this feat, I shall grant you audience. Come forward. I am chief among those who fell from heaven. Alongside the Angel of Darkness, I lead the demons of chaos. I am Beelzebub, ruler of death and warden of souls. So, here we have Lord Lucifer's favorite. I've heard much about you. With the power given to you by Lord Lucifer, you are trying to create a new demon, correct? What? You didn't know? That's what the menorahs are for. When all the menorahs have been returned to their rightful places, a new demon of chaos will be born. I have no idea how he talked you into collecting them, but I must say, you're quite gullible. Remember this, the demons of chaos are all waiting for that moment, the moment when a new demon is born, and Lord Lucifer makes his final decision. At this, the army of chaos will rise at his command to bring about that glorious event. I would gladly assist you. But you must first demonstrate that you are worthy of my help. My true form is more suitable for this test.
Beelzebub is a bit of a mainstay of the entire series, and is the ultimate incarnation of chaos that you are likely to ever encounter. Although Lucifer is technically the ultimate form of chaos, this is the one you're most likely to fight, in the same vein that on lore, Merkaba, or Yivi, depending on what SMT game you're playing, is the ultimate representation of lore, but you usually fight Metatron instead. The way Beelzebub works is, well, firstly, he's one of the chunkiest bosses in the game in terms of health, so be ready for that. But essentially, he is entirely built from the ground up to have access to dark-based instant kills and do everything in his power to get them off. Additionally, he's highly defensive, like I said, has a lot of health, has a healthier variety of physical attacks to help match out the odds difference, and has both Dakadra and Dakunda, so your buffs and nerfs will only ever last so long before they become undone. The biggest reason why this fight ends up taking forever, however, is because of a skill called Death Flies, which is based on Dark, but it does actually do damage as well. It hurts you and tries to instant kill you. But even though I have got a Magatama on right now, because I think I put Satan on again, so I'm immune to Dark attacks, I will still take the damage from it, which is unfortunate, but it is how it is. Daisojo is immune from it because of his infinite variety of resistances, but Chimera and Cerberus aren't. And the odds of the instant kill connecting from Death Flies is bafflingly high. I don't know the actual percentage, but it feels like it's somewhere around 80%. It connects often. And what I mean is that with I think only like one, if not two exceptions, every single Death Flies that comes our way gets both Chimera and Cerberus in one go. Like, it kills both of them. So, so this fight ends up becoming the 25-minute juggernaut it's going to be, because I spend a long chunk of it with just Demi-Fiend and Daisojo. So we literally got half the members, so have half the actions going in. Daisojo becomes a bit of a dedicated healer, so it's literally just Demi-Fiend attacking it for a long stretch of the fight. And if I'm honest, I find this boss harder than the boss you fight at the end of the 5th Kalpa. Like, don't get me wrong, the boss at the end of the 5th Kalpa is no pushover either, and the fact that we're fighting Beelzebub here, if you pay attention to my conversation, kind of gives away what the boss of the 5th Kalpa is, but on the off chance he didn't catch on, I won't spoil it. But I just find this boss harder, and I always kind of feel like you should have fought this on the 5th Kalpa and the boss on the 5th on the 4th. But I get what they were trying to go with, because the boss we fought in the 5th Kalpa is the owner of that voice that spoke to us the moment we stepped foot on the 2nd Kalpa. You know, the thing that was like noble voice, and it was telling you to go away, saying to do not pursue this path, do not go through the Labyrinth of Amala. The owner of that voice is who you fight on the 5th Kalpa, so I guess it makes sense for the final obstacle to be the one thing trying to stop you. But Beelzebub here is the biggest test trying to prove if you are worthy of Lucifer. And so this also feels like it would make sense for the 5th. But once you start getting a bit of a rhythm into the fight, the real fight will start to begin, and Beelzebub will warn you with this line, where it will warn you that it is about to do something new. And the first thing it does is get rid of your buffs and start preparing to do double damage on its next physical attack. So you need to deal with that immediately, because on the next turn, it's going to start with Dakunda to get rid of its nerfs and then unleash. So I Tetrakarn it just to give myself a safety net, because I know that's probably going to come next. It's not always guaranteed, but my god is it often. If he's going to use focus on something, he'll follow it up next turn with a Dakunda, then his physical attack, to maximize his damage. Which is why I start buffing myself instead of nerfing him, because I know, like I said, I know it's coming, and so I've just got to prepare for it. There's the Dakunda. And he uses Mega Deleon instead of a physical attack, so he's still got hold of that focus. Because he hasn't used a physical attack, that focus still stays, so you need to kind of keep that in mind. So I'm like, okay, since he didn't go for it, I'm just going to Warcry and Fog Breath him again to try and keep him minimal. You should be at the stage of the game now where, despite the fact he is going to be Dakadra and Dakundering, because you have access to Warcry, Fog Breath, and maybe Taunt if you're feeling brave enough, and maybe even Debilitate if you grinded a little bit, but I don't know. I think the earliest demon you can get it is a demon called Murder, which is like level 82, so I'm doubtful. But I might be wrong, I think that's the earliest you can get it. So I might be completely wrong, but my point is, you have strong enough nerfs and hopefully like are consistent enough on the buffs that you can make up for the Dekaja Dekunda problem. Like you can keep on top of the buffs and nerfs even when he's constantly like white lining them all and getting rid of them. And you're going to see me spend a heck of a lot of time with Chimera iron clawing as much as possible. Well, it's Chimera and Cerberus. But that's going to start falling apart. There comes that. Which even with the Warcry still did it. And here's Death Flies. You see, that time it was evaded by Chimera and Cerberus. It's the only time it happens. The next time it comes around, it hits both of them and successfully instant kills them. Like I said, it doesn't matter for Daisojo because he's immune to it anyway. And it never connects with us anyway, so it's fine. It's just Chimera and Cerberus that are at risk, and it keeps killing them. But we still take the damage from it, as I said before. We don't take the instant kill effect, thankfully, but we do take the damage. And the next boss, the boss on the 5th Kalpa, is the same sort of idea, but for light element instead of dark. Which, like I said, once again, is fine for Daisojo, and you do have Magatamas that will make you immune to light, so you can completely swerve that problem. So it will just be whatever you have extra, making sure that they are going to be safe. Like the Dominion that I fused a few videos ago, for the 5th Kalpa, it might be wise bringing a demon like that around, something from the Angel line, just because they're going to be immune to light anyway. I kind of stick with the team I've got for now, and it ends up nearly biting me in the backside. I'm surprised it didn't, because to jump the gun slightly, I forgot to swap to a light-based Magatama before the next boss. So I walk into it with Satan, you know, the one that makes it immune to dark, but weak to light. So every single time it uses a light-based instant kill, it has a higher odds of connecting with me. And somehow I get through the entire fight without it ever connecting once. Which was mind-boggling, because I was adamant it was going to be a dead run. Because literally the fight started and I went, oh, I forgot to swap. Alright, you know, I'll just ride it out and see what happens. And I somehow won the fight. I was like, oh, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's still like 2 videos away yet. Yeah, and I wish I was kidding. This video, all the way up to the half-hour mark, is the fight against Beelzebub. The rest of the video is showing everything you need to do to gain access to the 5th Kalpa. It's not as simple as once you beat this boss, you just proceed on. The room beyond Beelzebub is just loot. It's 3 mystical chests and 1 item box. The item box has 66,666 marker, which is nice. It's not as good as the 100,001 you could have got in the earlier room in the last video, but it's still really nice. But the 3 mystical chests, they're not even like predetermined mystical chests. They are entirely random. And so I get 3 life stones out of it. So my reward for beating this thing was 66 grand and 3 life stones. But here comes the Dekunda again. And another Death Flies. And because it used to use Dekunda, its hit and evasion's back to normal. It gets the instant kill on both Chimera and Cerberus. At this point, I was concerned. I was like, am I in a dangerous spot? Am I going to be in a situation where it's going to get dangerous? And I do end up winning, but it ends up becoming a much longer fight than there's any real right to because of Chimera and Cerberus being out of the fight quite regularly. Which is what you're seeing here. You're seeing me use my Bombs of Rising since I've got a small number of them anyway. And I'm not going to use them elsewhere, really. Like, there's a rare situation where it pops up where I end up using it. So the instant kill won't connect on us. Daisojo just dodges it like a champ. And now it's about getting those members back. So I'm like, okay, I can get them back in. I was just unlucky. No, it's not. My luck had nothing to do with it. Well, I say that my luck had something to do with it, but no, Death Flies just has an extremely high connection rate with its instant kills. So I top up again, and I think it uses Death Flies yet again after this. Yeah, which gets rid of Cerberus again, so at this point I'm like, okay, I can't use those 2. I need to stick with Daisojo and myself, because otherwise every single time it's going to Dekunda itself, those 2 are almost guaranteed to be killed if it then follows up with it. And once you're past the halfway point of its health bar, which I think we are, it's always going to make its second action Death Flies if you allow it to have 2 actions. And sometimes it's first as well for good measure. Well, okay, my point is that it will use it almost once per turn regardless. Even if it decides to directly challenge what I just said the very moment I say it. But because I'm now down to 2, yeah, this fight takes a while. The next 15 minutes we're still going to be fighting it. It's literally around the half-hour point of this video we're still fighting it. So if you get the idea and aren't interested in seeing the rest because you know what to expect, you just want to see what to do next or make it to the 5th Kalpa, feel free to skip like the half-hour mark because we're going to be here a while. But for those of you that are sticking around, which I appreciate, yeah, I'll try and bring in Chimera as well, just to see, maybe I can get something in, and you can imagine that lasts about as well as you'd think. I say that, I managed to dodge, so it didn't get its death flies off, but Chimera's on borrowed time, so like go for the defense low and just push to try and get some extra damage in before it's too late. Because Chimera has like 0 MP, so I can't even like get it to use a war cry or something. Get Pavati in. Yeah, so there we go. So say get Pavati in because Pavati can actually be somewhat helpful until Death Flies comes around. Oh, it didn't use it. Ooh, lucky me. I actually get to have a party of 4 for one turn. But yeah, this is only the second longest, so there is another boss fight later on that actually took longer. This entire fight is 25 minutes long. The longest, I think, is like 35 minutes long, which is a boss that we fight in the final dungeon of the entire game. We've actually witnessed it. It's Noah. When we actually fight against Noah, because we don't agree with anyone's reason, so we're going to be fighting their gods at some point. The boss fight against Noah, it becomes the longest fight in my recording. And that's because, as I've said before, that's the one I count as the last proper magic check of the game. Because although like you can hurt it with physical to an extent, at least for some of the fight, it's very much magic dominated for you to get anywhere in it, especially because it changes its resistances almost every turn. So you have to have access to magic of every element essentially to get the damage off. And it's highly resistant to Almighty, which is kind of bullshit, but it is what it is. So you have to actually play by the rules of the game and keep up with its elemental resistances as you go. But it's easy enough. It goes in a pattern, so as long as you learn the pattern, you're fine. But that's for another time. I'll explain it when we get to it, because my god, that's going to be a hard one to keep on talking about, because in my opinion, it's the most boring fight in the game as well. And so keeping up the communication on that is ugh. But to give you a general idea is that Beelzebub is the origin of the Cursed Corridor, which is why literally the room leading up to it, the entirety of it was Cursed Corridor. Once we kill it, your biggest giveaway that the curse is gone is that once we leave, that room is cleared. So there's no way you can miss the idea that the Cursed Corridors is gone, inviting you to the idea of going to other spots in the game where there were Cursed Corridors. So that loot that was at the start of the 4th Kalpa is now easier for you to reach. Alternatively, that 250,000 marker at the end of the corridor on the 2nd Kalpa now no longer has the corridor to it cursed. Although you will not get the reward after this fight because you have not accomplished the challenge. The challenge of it is that they want you to try and get through it whilst the curse is still there to get the reward. So if you go through it now, you won't. But you will start the side quest that leads to unlocking the 5th Kalpa. And there is a Mothman in the room just outside Beelzebub that will give this away to you and will tell you to start exploring to find a way to get to the 5th Kalpa. And explains that your biggest ticket is trying to find a key to open the gold doors. Which we saw one on the 3rd floor of the dungeon, and there's actually one on the 4th Kalpa as well. We just didn't go there yet because we're going there later. But to get that key, we need to find out where it went. Going to the Ifrit at the end of that corridor on the 2nd Kalpa will have him tell us that he gave it to a drinking buddy. The only real 2 bars in the game we visited, one was more of a dance club, and that was in Shibuya, and the other is Nyx's Lounge. Again. Where we can go in there and talk to Loki, and if you talk to Loki, he'll then say, oh, I didn't care for it, so I gave it to a collector mannequin who was after it. He's talking about the collector mannequin that we've helped and on and off throughout the game. You know, the one that helped us get through the underpass of Ginza by finding him a bill. It's ironic that he gave his key to the very mannequin that led to us robbing him, but whatever. But we'll go there, get that, go to the mannequin, talk to him, he'll give up the key, and then from there we can access the key to... You can use the key on the 3rd floor, which will lead us to a secret compartment of the 4th Kalpa, which in that will activate a switch that will then allow us to proceed through the end of the 4th Kalpa to access the 5th Kalpa. Which is one of those things where, when I explain it to people, they go, how would you work it out without a guide? They do kind of tell you. I said the Mothman will tell you to start looking around, start talking to people. The fact that the cursed corridor has vanished might tip you on to checking out the area in the 2nd Kalpa that was cursed. And if you happen to miss it, well, at some point you're gonna be looking through all the labyrinth Kalpas to try and find something you missed, and you're going to stumble upon that secret room eventually in the 2nd Kalpa, which is exactly what happened to me actually on my blind playthrough way back when I was working it out. I actually completely missed the cursed corridor entirely until after Beelzebub. So it was only when I was going back through it and I was trying to work out what I needed to do, I happened to stumble into that corridor. When I explored it to the end, the Ifrit at the end said, oh, I had a key, but I gave it up to a drinking buddy. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the lounge then. Went there, got tipped off about the collector mannequin, went to the collector mannequin, got the key. And I remembered that door in the 3rd Kalpa because it bugged me that I couldn't find a way to open it. Because at the time, I assumed it was behind one of the skill doors. You know, the 3rd Kalpa on the first half, there's 3 doors, and the other 2 are locked until certain stats are high enough. Well, I said all 3 of them are locked unless certain stats are high enough. The first one being a strength test, one being a luck test. That was a really unfortunate attack, Daisojo getting beaten out. So I need to get Daisojo back in, because he's a necessary party member, because he's the healer. Which means I have to also tank a turn without a healer, which is worrying. Get Daisojo back in. I also have Hellbiker, which I never used. Because that was just me making sure I'm working on the compendium a little bit, because the fiends can be quite annoying to fuse. So I was like, well, if I just fuse a couple as and when they come, they'll be fine. Alternatively, bringing one of the horsemen might not be a terrible idea for this if you're prepared to get the material together to fuse them. Particularly, I want to say either... I think it's Red Rider is the one that's helpful for this, but don't quote me on that. I just remember... Like, at the time when I was going through this, a lot of people were saying, like, bring one of the riders with you, and just in the back of my mind, something's telling me Red Rider was the one. But so I might be wrong on that. I haven't used the Four Horsemen, in a very long time in Nocturne, so I honestly couldn't tell you what makes each one of them unique when you're using them. Other than the fact that, like a lot of the other fiends, it's immune to a lot. That was a very unfortunate miss as well, because I kind of need that so Daisojo can continue being helpful. And eventually I think I just decide, you know what, I'm just going to have it so Demi-Fiend fixes the problem. So I've still got another 6 speeds. I would have had more if I brought a healer in the first time round entering the Kalpa, but oh well. Oh, and I've still got counter. I forgot I hadn't got rid of that yet. And it misses again, just to really, like... So now Daisojo can't use Meditate, because it costs at least 10 MP to do it. I get another counter for some stupid reason. It's around this point in the game that counter kind of starts to run out of its help. It starts to kind of just exist, and you kind of go, okay. So it's moving on. It's time to approach a point where I'll eventually replace it. I keep it around for a little longer, but when we get Deadly Fury, and especially when we get the ultimate physical skill of the game, which I struggle to pronounce, so I'm just going to stop bothering. It's the only Magatama we're missing in the game, the one that we have to buy from the final dungeon. That one's like 3rd or 4th skill is the ultimate physical attack in the game, because it has an extremely high... It's single target, but it's an extremely high damage threshold. It's the highest of the game. Has a high crit rate, has a very high hit rate, and it doesn't actually cost as much HP as some other skills because of it being single target. So you can get a lot of use out of it. Even though the description of it I think is wrong, because it says it's almighty damage when it's not. It means it's an almighty amount of physical damage. Like, it's not quite accurate on its description. Which is something that, starting with, I think it was Persona 5 that corrected it. Oh, it might have been SMT4, one or the other, but one of them actually started giving a name for Tier 4 and Tier 5 properly. Because Tier 4 is usually, like, in some games it just says heavy again, and you have to work out that it means heavier than the heavy. And in some games it says severe. But because there was no, like, kind of unity in the terms, it was kind of on and off between each game. But SMT4 made... No, it was SMT4. It made it so it was always severe for Tier 4 and always colossal for Tier 5. And then Persona 5 just carried on that trend. And made more out of it. Even if Persona 5 Base... I haven't played Royal, so I don't know if they corrected it. But Persona 5 Base also had its fair share of weird translations on skills. The main one being is that in Persona 5, Lucifer has his own unique version of Megadaleon. Like, it's a unique almighty skill that hits everyone. And its description is identical to Megadaleon. It's literally the exact same words, despite the fact that it is actually a tier above it. And they didn't... Because Megadaleon's damage scaling is based on Tier 4 in Persona 5. So they accurately say severe almighty damage, because severe means... Instead of saying heavy, they say severe, because it means Tier 4. But because it's a higher damage variant of it, they should have called it Colossal. They should have said Colossal almighty damage on the description. But they don't. They just say severe again. So a lot of people just look at it and go, but it's just Megadaleon that costs more SP. Why would I use that? It's like, no, it is stronger. It is stronger. I have no idea why they didn't just decide to go down the SMT route. Like, I understand that Persona's stat distribution is very different and to the point where it's borderline useless compared to SMT. Because in, let's say, in Persona, it's you can lower things by only one level and boost yourself only by one level. And it only lasts 3 turns, so it will run out anyway, so it's just a very temporary shift of power, and not anything that actually feels like it matters too much. Whilst in SMT, they can last the entire fight if no one Dekages and Dekundas it, and you can stack it up to 4 times for each thing. But it still would have given it more longevity if the Antiphion, the skill I talked about before, was what they gave Lucifer in Persona 5. So it made it so it doubled up as a group-wide debilitator as well. So I guarantee you people would have been on board then. Because even if it's not as effective, that's still really nice to get some damage and nerf. But maybe that would have affected Persona 5's balance too much. Because the Persona series... Simplify is the wrong word for it, because it certainly isn't simple in its own way. It has a lot of its own unique mechanics and systems that make it interesting in the gameplay. But... it is a lot more beginner-friendly, I think is the better way to put it. Like, it's easier to get into than a lot of other, not just Atlas titles, but JRPGs in general. Which is probably why Persona 5 became as mainstream as it did, and is now selling, like, literally millions. Like, I think they recently announced... Oh, by the way, Beelzebub finally died. But it's why that they announced recently that it's like Persona 4 Golden, the PC version alone broke 1 million units. And things like that. Like, the Persona series at large does really well for itself nowadays. And a lot of it is because of how easy to get into it is, but there still being a lot there. Like, they don't compromise the skill ceiling too much. They just bring the floor down to something that's reachable for people who aren't really into JRPGs, and keep them around with its interesting stories. But I get my team back in, even though they're next to no health. Which is worrying, but it is what it is. Yeah, and I just start medicing them up, because I know I'm going to be leaving after this. But where in Persona they do keep things just that little bit easier, I think sometimes that's what ends up stopping them from throwing in some of the much crazier skills that SMT have. Because Luster Candy would be ridiculous in Persona. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've mentioned it in a previous video, but Luster Candy is Heat Riser group-wide. So it will boost all of your stats, but it's the entire party, instead of it just being yourself. And Luster Candy's never been in a Persona game, and I'm pretty sure the reason why is because of just how things are rebalanced and reworked in Persona. It would break the game in two. Even if they made it a super high SP cost, it would still ravage the game's balance. So they just don't. But it'd be nice if there's in a Persona 6 and they want to borrow anything. There's also a Shady Surgeon right out the door here, which is pretty appreciated, so thank you. It's 15,000 marker at this point. Yeah, he charges a lot more later on than he used to, but oh well. And I keep this footage in because I needed to find a way out, because it's not as simple as backtracking. But here's the Mothman that lets you know that where you need to go. He says there's a demon who might know where the key is. There's somewhere else that also used to be cursed. So that's your hints to go to the second Kalpa and check out the cursed corridor, because now you'll be able to go through and find out where the key is. So now it's just a matter of getting through. But lean to the east, because there's another Death Stone in it for you. There's not that many left to get, but there's still a number of them. No, I think we've got about half of them, or like a little over half. So I proceed backwards. This is the door we entered from. But yeah, I edited out the encounter, but there was nothing there. It was just a wall. So instead, from the door, you need to press east, and I think this is what leads to it. Yeah, from the opening door, press east. And that down that ladder, sorry, is what it will lead you to a locked door that cannot be opened until you flick a switch elsewhere in the fourth Kalpa. But you can't get to it now. You can only get to it through the third Kalpa. But the door that needs to lead to it requires the star key, so now we need to go get that star key. After dealing with Beelzebub, your next destination is the second Kalpa. You need to go here into that middle room in the top left corner of the first floor you really drop into, down the ladder and through the cursed corridor. The curse has been undone. You can go now. The high-level enemies are still in here, though, even though the curse isn't, so, you know, don't just kind of expect it to be basic and easy. You will still get, like, ravaged if you're not careful. Eventually going down the spiral and down the ladder just to save you the burden, because I was already aware this video was going to be kind of long. You can now talk to this Ifrit. My drinking buddy is somewhere up in Tokyo getting hammered. He's got the key that opens the golden doors. And that starts the side quest. Now we need to go find that drinking buddy. All the way back in Ginza at Nyx's lounge, go talk to Loki over here. Oh, you again. What, the star key? I drank the damn thing, or I might as well have. I sold it to a curious mannequin, see? I needed the money, what with my room being raided and all. The booze helps. Oh yeah, let's not tell him that we were the one that raided his room. So you took it to collect a mannequin. Well, let's go talk to that collector in Asakusa. Welcome. And talk to him. By the way, I got this from a demon for 60 maka the other day. It's called the Star Key. But I'm not interested in it. I'm only interested in man-made items. So I'll give it to you if you'd like. Do you want it? Sure. I see. Okay then, here you go. That's what then Fiend received the Star Key. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your shopping. Well. No, you don't really have anything. Maybe I could buy a few more revival beads. I think I do. I think I do go back and buy a couple more revival beads. But now in the third Kalpa, after you do that initial room where you have like the strength test, the luck test, or the varied test, and you drop down into this room, and there's that Jack Frost warning you about Dante or Raido in the next floor. To the south, there's the golden door, which the key is for. Door is locked. Use the key. On the other side is like a shaft mini game, and one of those drop tunnels. This is the one I've talked about before, where if you play your cards right and know exactly what things to break, you can rack up a baffling amount of money. I don't, because I only do it twice, which is on the way down and then when I go back up. I've never bothered really committing this one to memory because there's a lot of other ways of getting money. I only really even found out that this was so effective for money making when I was watching someone else go through it, and they were showing what they were doing to grind up money, because it was Jim Reaper's channel. He was showing how to grind up money whilst keeping himself at a low level, because he was doing a low level run. And he was showing footage of this and racking in more than 99,000. It says 99,999 if you hit the cap, but he was racking in anywhere between 50,000 to 99,000 per run. And so the fact that you can just keep doing that if you know how to do it perfectly makes it extremely effective for money making. I haven't had to resort to that yet, but I probably will, because I've been trying to grind up levels as well to get trophies. Because there's a trophy for maxing out Demi-Fiend stats naturally, which means all of them need to be a raw 40 and not 40 with the help of something else. Which, that is a hideous grind. Like, I'm close now, but it is a hideous grind. Because you hit level 99, because basically it stops counting the number, but your max level is actually 255. But I'm like level 120 something now, in like outside of my recording. Like I'm very high up there, and I'm like 4 or 5 levels short still. but I'll do it. Because I don't know if there'll be any proper bonus videos. I'm still very much on the fence about it. If I ever max out the compendium, I will do a bonus video showcasing it. But that's not a project, like part of the project plan. That's a, if in my spare time I happen to get it done, I'll at least show you guys. The only other thing that I don't show off in this that would have been nice, but it just never really worked out, is that if you know your mythologies well, you can catch on to certain demons being in knowledge of each other or straight up being related to each other, and you can use that to your advantage to encounter very unique negotiations. And the way they'll work is usually, like, to give an example, I'm trying to think of one. The one I've got in my party that I could go do is there's a demon that I mentioned before that I was like, oh, it would have been nice if I could get it, but I never did. And it's like Scave, or Scavave, which is like, it looks like a feminine demon that's like dressed in black with like a black witch hat that's like sitting with her legs crossed. Like, I think it's called Scave, or something like that. I have her. If you take her to Setenta in Yoyogi Park, in mythology, Setenta trained under Scave, or Scava, or however you call its bloody name. So if you initiate a conversation between them, the Setanta and her will have a conversation that is entirely separate from you. They will just like shoot the shots and chat for a while, and at the end, the Setanta will give you an item to represent her efforts. And you can get things like agility incenses and strength incenses and like genuinely really helpful things by doing that. The big one that get you a lot of items is basically bring any mythological god associated with Loki, waddle into a Mala temple, encounter Loki, start talking. Because although he's a tyrant, and so you can't recruit him, you can talk to him. It's like if you go in with four as a go at him and like threatens to kill him because of Loki cutting his wife's hair, and Loki just like teases him back and says, oh, she looks better that way. But anyway, you don't need the hair, here's an item, and he gives you an item and then leaves. Like if you bring in Zeus, like they all have a conversation and eventually Loki will leave and like give you an item. I think that's the one where he'll give you a magic incense. If you have any of the four angels, as in like Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, or Michael, and have one of them talk to anything from the angel line, you will get lengthy conversations out of them that reward in loot. If you have Metatron much later in the game, that's a funny one, because almost all of them is, I am the voice of God, I demand an item, and all the angels go, yeah, okay, sure. But I'll get back to that another time, because we've got a rather lengthy cutscene, because we're going to have not one, but two things explained to us on what will probably be your last visit here that you are likely to have.
At last, you have restored all of the menorahs to their rightful places. I promised earlier that I would answer all of your questions, sparing no detail. It may have occurred to you that the menorahs were not, in fact, stolen. In truth, my master gave them to those whom he deemed worthy. I must apologize for not being honest with you, but there is a reason. If you listen to what I have to say, I am sure you will understand. The forces of light and darkness have fought throughout the universe, even beyond the flow of time. Their battles have affected every living being in existence. Demons and humans are no exception. They have simply been cogwheels in the infernal machine called war. And the war still rages on, even as we speak. However, one individual vowed to put an end to this eternal war. He decided to create a demon of chaos, one that would inherit his will and enter the final battle against the forces of light. The fiends were prepared for the creation of that demon. He believed that by challenging and overcoming death, the demon would become the fruit of destruction, the black hope that we had awaited for so long. That is what he and my master planned. The fiends and the labyrinth of Amala were ordeals meant to test you. One fiend challenged you, unaware of the truth, while another fiend fell to you, dreaming of a future of chaos. Yes, this was all in preparation for the final battle. You have vanquished all the fiends, and now here you stand, just as he hoped, a demon with the strength to become the champion of chaos. So, will you lend your strength to us for the sake of all who live in darkness? I cannot force you to help us. If you choose to walk the path of a human, then there is no need for you to return here. But if you have doubts about the laws of the universe, about fate, or the providence of the Absolute One, then you should come to us at the very bottom of the labyrinth. There, you shall be born again as a full demon, body and soul. Let me conclude by telling you about a human who has crossed your path, one who is drifting, being kept alive by fate. It is my master's wish that you listen before deciding upon a path to take. The man I am referring to was known as Hijiri in your previous world. He died, but as fate would have it, he carried on in the Vortex world. Think back to when you first met him, to when the conception occurred. Hijiri shared the fate of all the others who perished in the dawning chaos. As he was heading to the hospital where you already were, the conception began, and his life ended. Did it not seem odd to you that he was in the Vortex world, unaffected, unchanged? It was all because of the mortal sin which he committed. He was a being toyed with by fate, denied the respite of death, and condemned to carry the burden of atonement forever. His punishment was to see with his own eyes all that happens in the world, to record the balance of events through all the ages. A task as endless as scooping water out of the sea with a cup. He was condemned to wander the infinite span of time. Man can change the course of his next life by virtue of his karma, but that privilege was taken away from Hijiri. Though his body may perish, his soul will remain unsaved. He must continue on with his task. He lives a cursed, eternal life, just like a demon. Watch and record the history of the world. Witness the entirety of the endless war between order and chaos. That is your punishment for your unforgivable sin. Do you understand now? By the will of Amala, he was given a life of torment and emerged in the Vortex world without realizing that he had died. Soon after, your paths crossed again. That is probably because you have the potential to affect the course of the new world. So by accompanying you, he has unknowingly been fulfilling his destiny. Tragically, he has no memory of his sin, his punishment, or even his death. He believes that he survived the conception and has acted accordingly. As for the results of his efforts, you already know the outcome. In the body of a mannequin, Hijiri challenged those vying for creation, and he lost his body once again. He is now on a journey to a new land of suffering, but his will can never be freed, and his sin never redeemed. Do you want your life to be predestined as well? Or would you rather choose your own actions? If you do not wish to be ruled by destiny, if you would prefer to walk with demons on a new, untrodden path, then please, come visit my master. You can open the door ahead with the menorah I gave you. Will you come meet my master? Then, we will be waiting in the deepest part of the labyrinth. I will open the way to the last door. Please use the menorah and come see us. We look forward to seeing you soon. Until then...
Although it's been made pretty obvious before that point, one of the two main things that Lucifer and the Lady in Black was explaining to you there, because yes, the gentleman in the wheelchair is Lucifer if you hadn't caught on yet, is essentially they're trying to find a warrior to stand side by side with Lucifer in the true final battle against the heavens. He wants to challenge God, the actual God. He wants to challenge the All-Father, the divine will, and everything there is to a final battle of the universe. And he is wanting to bring a warrior with him to stand as a worthy ally in the grand final battle that will decide the fate of all universes. And so by doing the Labyrinth of Amala, killing the fiends, working your way through Beelzebub, and working your way through all the 5 Kalpas, all of it is proving your worth that you are strong enough to do so, to be trusted to be that very warrior. But the problem is the fact that you're still half human. You're half demon, half human. The further you... It's been hinted at quite regularly with the fact that demons start to buddy up with you a bit more, and there's more demons around that will just talk to you the further you get into it. But you are becoming more associated with your demonic side than your humanity the further you proceed through here. With the ultimate end goal being, you will be granted a rebirth if you clear the 5th Kalpa. You will straight up be reborn and find yourself back in the medical center, but now only as a demon. You will no longer be a demi-fiend, you will just be a demon. You will no longer be half human, half beast, you will be just the beast. Which grants you access to unique powers, will access the true final boss, and lead to the true demon ending. Which is why it's called that, because you don't represent the demon, you become one. Which is what stands different from, say, the Chaos ending in this game, where you just represent one by allowing the world to die. But you saw there that we actually used the menorah, so you think, well, hang on a minute, we didn't fight any new fiends, so what was that menorah? That was our one. That was the one we were given at the start of the game that even lured in the other fiends to begin with. But as you proceed onwards down this door, you'll get yet another cutscene, and this one is rather exciting regardless of whether you're playing Chronicles or Maniacs.
Honestly, I never thought you'd make it this far. But shit's gonna get even worse from now on. We're talking knee-deep here, and we're gonna be wading in it from here to Kingdom Come. Thought maybe you could use an extra hand. Like a devil hunter, for instance. But seriously, a demon slayer hired by a demon. It's the joke of the century, don't you think? So, how about it? Alright then, let's talk business. I usually charge a ridiculous amount of money. But in this case, I'll make an exception. Let's flip a coin. Heads or tails? If you win, you owe me $1. Oh, yeah, it's Maka here, isn't it? Give me 1 Maka then. But if you lose, you'll have to give me half of what you've got. Call it. Heads or tails? Heads it is. You're lucky, kid. Okay, you get the special discount price of 1 Maka. Thank you very much. Starting today, I work for you. So, what's your name? I see. Not a bad name. Okay. How about we go pay a visit to the ruler of hell? Maybe take some demon heads as souvenirs. final battle between the army of God and the Devil's legions. This ought to be interesting.
The coin he flips is the exact same one he used in Devil May Cry 2, so if you already know the twist of the coin being heads on both sides, you're guaranteed to always win that you only play one marker to hire him. But yes, you have Dante in your party, and he has been buffed from the original release. In the original, he was the only being in the entire game that under no circumstance could ever learn the skill Pierce, which is a skill that allows you to ignore physical defenses and skills that are blocked by physical. They amended that. A skill called Sun's Oath will now grant Dante Pierce. But that being said, next time on SMT3 Nocturne, we're going to explore the 5th Kalpa with Dante as our ally. But until then, take care now. Peace.